Welcome to Panel for Parity. We have these great panelists. We're going to introduce them again. Yes. All right, our first panelist, once more, is Vinita Ratti, a technical architect and the founder of Sistengo, an IT agency that helps founders and companies build tech products. In her community time, Vinita is the director of Women Who Code's London chapter and the co-founder of Women Hack for Nonprofits.
Hi. Our next panelist is Hera Hussain. She's the founder of Chain, an open source project empowering women against oppression and enabling them through technology. She's also curator of Empower Hack, an organization that aids female refugees.
Next up, we have Jade Dobney, a graduate recruiter here at ThoughtWorks, our graceful hosts for the evening. She is usually touring the UK in order to ensure her company have an awesome and diverse intake. She is not just extremely passionate about women in tech, but diversity in general. Hi, Jade.
Hi.
And our fourth panelist is Charlotte Faraday, who is a program manager for Code First Girls, a social enterprise which works with companies and women to increase the proportions of women in tech and entrepreneurship. Prior to this, she worked at the Cultural Institute at King's, managing a broad portfolio of collaborative projects, and co-founded an edutech startup called Eulogy.com. She recently completed her PhD at King's College London and is now learning to code with the support of Code First Girls.
Hi, Charlotte. Last but not least, we have Eddie Jauta, who is a consultant who enjoys attending and contributing to hackathons and conferences. His first foray into the realm of women's issues was Empower Hack's Empowering Women and Girl Refugees Hackathon. He has since then contributed to Empower Hack's open source projects from a technical perspective and has brought his expertise and infectious enthusiasm to actively support the growth of women in tech with Women Hack for Nonprofits.
Great.
Welcome, panelists. We're going to once again prompt you about your thoughts.
Thank you again for joining us. So the first question is for the entire panel. So feel free to chime in as you think of your response. But the question is, have you experienced workspaces that had gender parity? And what special ingredient do you think women in tech bring to a role or a team?
I'll go first again. Deja vu. I would say my current company, ThoughtWorks, has gender parity. I'm not saying that we're perfect, we're really not. There is a lot more that we could do as a business, but I think we make a really good start. I think we really care about women in tech and gender equality. 33% of our workforce is women. 50% of our graduate intake are females. So yeah, I think we make a lot of effort. We really try, but we try to be inclusive as well, rather than just get women in. How do we create a good workspace for females? So I would say, yeah, my current company, which I'm feel really honoured and really looking for.
Hera, thoughts?
You're very lucky. In the 5 years that I've worked in tech, I actually have never worked in an organization that had more than 10 to 20% women. It just made me really conscious that I was a woman, and it's really fascinating that now that I'm working with more women on Chain and Empower Hack, the dynamics are really different. I really enjoy working it. There are little things that you don't realize, and then just you figure out that in this more women-rich environment, teams work better, and it feels less constrained. There's less stress. So I mentioned that there are a couple of studies that have come out recently about how teams which have more women leaders have less stress levels, do better, are more productive. And my theory about that is that women we're brought up to have better social skills. So through no desire of our own, society brings us to be more aware of each other, of each other's feelings, moods, but also about how being very rational, as Vinita was saying before, that we're forced to be rational, and in teams that is exactly pragmatic. In teams, that's excellent.
Yeah. And I was actually quoting an example of the conversation that I had with someone at an e-commerce application app company on Friday, and we were just having this random conversation about the technologies that they use at their place for building applications, and why do they use those versus why do they not use other languages which are out there, which probably could be better business-wise. And the only answer that I was hearing again and again was, you know what, this is an engineering team decision, this language is so cool, it works, this language sucks, and there wasn't even any a proper answer to that question on why did you choose one language over another. And the fact that the person wasn't even admitting that they did not do that analysis, and it's okay to go ahead with the language of your choice, but I guess you should be open to accept that. And I guess it's just more about how you perceive people, how you come across. And I guess as women, I think we just come across more pragmatically, as what Hera was saying, and then we try to take team along with us. We give them rationale, we give them reasons, we always explain them on why certain decisions were taken, rather than just enforcing and saying, this is cool, let's do it. So I think,
and to just pick up on what you said, I think it's because we are told that we can be bossy, so we feel like we have to explain ourselves.
We have to justify ourselves.
Exactly. Everything that we have to do, we have to justify it.
Yeah.
And I was quoting something before that this really shocking, for a lot of people, really shocking study came out about how men view women's code worse than their peers when it's actually not. So, and I feel like that for women who come into organizations, this is not just code. I mean, through various medical profession has this, like loads of professions have it. So we try extra hard when we're in a team, and we shouldn't have to, but we do.
Yeah. And actually, there was this recent article that also came out about number of pull requests that gets approved and reviewed. And apparently, it says that majority of the pull requests that gets approved are from women developers. But the moment approver tend to know the gender of the person who has sent the pull request, they would tend to deny those if they come from minority groups, you could say, or women's.
And this was about open source projects as well, which was really, really shocking.
And to that, I have heard some conversations about the reason why that happens is because most of the pull requests that comes in are more about adding a comma here and there, more about just changing the format and stuff like that. And that's why women's pull requests tend to get accepted more than men's, which is completely ridiculous.
Have you ever experienced gender parity in a workspace, Woody?
I've had the opportunity of working on quite a few projects where it hasn't been balanced, it hasn't been 50-50 at all, anywhere close to that. But it has opened my eyes, definitely, to see how another point of view really, really helps. And I think, like you mentioned, I think us guys, we do love our shiny new technology. And where it might not be the right decision for the role. I think that's where experience comes in, and having worked with a balanced team, absolutely.
Could I answer the question?
Sure.
I think, so coming from my perspective, I'm working at Code First Girls. I have a fairly skewed vision. I'm working with 3,500 community members. We've got around 150 volunteers, so volunteer instructors. And
Are they all girls?
No, so this was actually what I was going to bring up. Out of those volunteers, we have around 60% of men, around 40% of women. So actually, some of our biggest advocates are men. I think it can be problematic sometimes to make generalizations about gender. Certainly from what we do, everything, all of our courses, all of our events are for women. We're addressing the fact that there's less than 17% of women in tech and telco, and actually that figure's gone down since 1980s. We have more women in tech. What's happening? It's complicated, but I would say that some of our, the men are a really important part of what we're doing, and some of our biggest advocates, and really helping us to achieve change as well.
Yeah. Eddie, from a man's perspective, what do you view as the importance of diversity or having a diverse work environment, especially in the tech industry as it is now?
Well, I think like what you were saying, if you've 60% of your coaches are men, those men have probably worked with women, so they do appreciate having that balance. And I think I think, as we said before, that if you've never had chocolate before, how can you like chocolate? Whereas once you've kind of experienced that, you want that in your life. I mean, I go to projects and I do want to have balance because I've had the luxury of having that. So I think it's about educating people, or I know I've seen some tweets saying we should try and get 50% of women on into tech over the next however X many years. I think it'd be really beneficial to at least try in a shorter term, try and get one or two. Therefore, when guys move on to other projects, they notice something's missing and they want to have that other opinion, the other view, because there's no point having 3 people looking at the same problem in the same angle. You want people to look at it from different angles. So you can architect it beforehand and make sure you get it right, rather than build and go, oh, that didn't work, that wasn't right. So yeah, I think I've had the luxury, but I think we need to educate more people in having that as well.
Can I just pull up your point on culture? And I think Vinita would love to hear what you have to say. So I have a lot of Iranian friends in Iran. Women actually outnumber men in universities, so much so that they had to put a quota on how many women opt in for computer science courses. There were so many women going for it. So in Iran, actually, the culture dynamics are different. So they're just, women do so much better at university that the government's really worried that there's going to be like no men in jobs. And I grew up in Pakistan. And Pakistan, I remember that there was a time period where they thought that yes, only men could sort of do well in sciences. But in my generation, I say as if I'm 70, but when I was going to school, it was just, people just thought that girls just did better because they had to, because if they didn't do better, then their parents are looking for them to get married or stuff. So girls just had to work really hard. So everybody, I used to sit in the first row in my class for maths, and I'm really bad at maths. Everybody in my class thought I was the best because I was always at the front, and the girls always sit in the front in the class. So it's just really interesting how in different cultures you have different.
It was almost similar in India as well. So,
So I have a question for you, Jade, actually, building on this topic. So, so you mentioned earlier that that your company, your intake is about what, 50%
Graduate, graduate.
Do you actually feel that there's a gap in the number of male and female students who are choosing to start their careers in the tech industry before you even get to that?
Yes.
Where you have 50%. Like, is there a gap further back?
Yeah, 100%. And this gap gets wider and wider the older you get. So it starts off. We'll start at graduate level. So it was when I took over graduate recruiting, only 9% of the applicants were female, which is crazy. And then we really focused on female events and how to inspire women, how to grow that confidence, and that is still pretty low. It's still like 24% of female applicants, but still it's getting better. Better than 9%, yeah. So there's that gap, and I think I speak to hundreds, thousands of graduates, and the thing that comes across a lot with our female graduates is a confidence thing, and it's this imposter syndrome, and it's like, why do you not feel comfortable? What's wrong? And it's, well, I was one of 3 women in my computer science course, and they didn't take me seriously, and they didn't do this, and I just felt like I wasn't good enough. And so there's a huge issue there with confidence, and I think it's not just for the boys. Actually, it is a really good event that we go to, which do skill sessions with the girls who are looking to get into tech, and I think it was kind of, we had a group of like 50 females, and by the end of it, like 48 of them was like, actually, I feel so much more confident to apply for a role now. And it was just that one skill session saying, actually, no, you are good enough. And this is how you build on that confidence, and this is how you kind of go forward. But I think there's issues before that. Why at school is it still seen as a boys' subject? And I know there's government initiatives, and it's kind of it's compulsory now to do coding at schools. I don't know whether that's the solution. You've got teachers who've been teachers for 20 years and don't know how to teach it and make it exciting. So I don't know how it's going to work, and I don't think it is the solution. But there are things being done. But I think it starts really young, and it starts. Why is it still seen as a boys' subject?
can I be able to solve that problem, they chose to stay away from it rather than even like attending to it, right? Now, if you relate that with what is there in the technology, it's very similar. Technology is all about problem solving skills. All you do day in, day out is you have different problems to solve, and like, you just sit there, you try to make your way through and you solve it, right? It's also error-prone process. I mean, more errors you commit, more you learn, right? So it's always hit and try. You never get things right in the first step. Versus we as girls, we as women, I think what we tend to do is we tend to get it right the very first moment. Otherwise, we just shy away. I mean, that's something that perception needs to change, I guess, at the very early stage, I think. And I guess that's why we're seeing that pipeline problem, which usually people call, that there aren't enough girls to recruit in the first place. How can you solve the problem of like gender parity at the workplace?
Actually, I'd love to hear from Charlotte, because the mission, part of the mission of Code First Girls is to bring more women into the tech industry. And could you maybe share with us some of the ways it achieves this mission, some of the things you do to accomplish this?
Yeah, I think it really links back actually to what was just being said there. I think a huge part of what we're doing is essentially forming a community of like-minded young women. So we work in different ways, but I'd say it's actually a huge part of women developing their technical skills, going to events, sort of demystifying essentially careers in technology and entrepreneurship. I think so much of it is exactly what you were saying there around being in a community of like-minded women and sharing those experiences. So part of how we're addressing the issue is by community-led. So we run free coding courses. So actually right now we've got 700 young women up and down the UK learning to code for free. We've got 28 courses running. We work with 21 universities, 17 of Russell Group, and we've got 4 corporate locations. So ThoughtWorks is one of our London General corporate locations. We also work with Twitter, Level 39, a FinTech accelerator, and we're growing. And what's really exciting to see is that this semester alone, we got 1,500 applications and 700 places. There is so much demand, actually, and the women on our courses they're not from typical technology backgrounds. They're from arts and humanities, other STEM subjects, social sciences, and they are actually making the transition from having no knowledge of coding. And they actually are going into careers in technology, and it's quite amazing to see that. I think so much of it is the power of being surrounded by other women.
Just want to add one more thing. I was just going to say it's really good to have that community, I think, and have people grow their confidence, because I mean I've interviewed a lot of people to join my teams over the years, and unfortunately a small percentage of those have been women. But they always, I give a test now to make it quick and simple, just try and filter out. And the women usually do underestimate themselves, and they do say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I can do this. I'll do the best I can." But I come back and it's done. Yeah. And whereas the guys say, "Oh, I'll do this, no problem," and they come back, it's not even half done. It's think, come on, just why are you wasting both our time, sort of thing. And I'm talking hundreds of people. I mean, I've lost patience with some people because, mostly guys, actually all of them being guys, because why waste my time if they're being cocky? I think it's not overconfidence, it's being cocky. I think, again, balancing that act. I think it's nice to be a little bit confident and have confidence, but not overconfident or underconfident. So I think that's really good.
Yeah. And actually saying about that, it reminds me, my first day at Goldman, right, there were probably, and you can, sort of people, the same stuff, 100 people on the floor, maybe hardly 4 or 5 ladies, right? My first call, maybe about 12 people on the call, all male, maybe about 5 to 10 years of experience, right? I wasn't even able to utter a single word on that call. And I was like, yeah. And then my manager came to me and was, "Why weren't you speaking?" And I was like, "I don't think I have enough experience to even voice my opinion or what I think about it." Right? Next meeting, so first one was more of a conference call with 12 people dialing in from New York, from India office, and from London. Second meeting was more in person. I just uttered one single line saying, "This is what I did today," right? The moment I came out, I received a text saying, "Vinita, well done. You were absolutely I still have that text saved on my phone. because it just made me a completely different person. Like, you know, the next time when I went in there, I was literally like talking, I was explaining what I did and like, you know, what I could do to the system, what changes I could make. So even that one line of encouragement just makes a big difference in your career.
Yeah.
So building on that, actually, so this is a question for all of the panelists. What do you think is the importance of having mentors or role models or sponsors? You know, someone who's like rooting for you or encouraging you when you're not even really asking for it. What do you think the importance of having people like that are to your career and for those of other women in the tech industry?
I would have not been sitting here had I would have not had that manager in Goldman. Right. So I mean, I think it's absolutely important, not just from your like, you know, personality building point of view. I think they are someone who are able to give you direction. They don't let you commit the same mistake that they have committed in their career, right? So you aren't just learning from your own mistakes, you learn from others' mistakes. That's the value that you get. Sometimes you tend to ignore your strengths, and I think as a girl, I don't know if it's just me or everyone else here, but I would always try to overcome my weakness. So, you know, I'll forget what my strength is. I would just try to make sure that this is my weakness, I have to work on it, right? And that mentor actually tells you that everyone has their own strengths and weakness. The point is not to work on your weakness. The point is probably hone your strengths more and just work on those. And like, you know, that will show your true value to wherever you're working. Yeah. So having that insight, somebody reviewing you, overseeing you is absolutely must.
Building on that, sorry, that's so true. We did with my sponsor, my mentor at ThoughtWorks, we did this kind of bit of a survey actually, and it brings out your 5 top strengths, and I was like, I can't believe they are my strengths, and he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I wanted passionate, and I wanted proactive, and I wanted this, and he was like, but you've got people person, and do you know how many people struggle with those social skills, and you've already got them, and you find it really easy, and you don't see it as a strength. So hoping you build on that, where I was just looking at more negative, like, oh, I need to do this, and he was like, no, you've got to work on and build on all these awesome things that other people don't have. So yeah, I think having a mentor is so vital. But again, going back to what Charlotte was saying before, my mentor at ThoughtWorks is male. And I think as women in tech, I don't think you have to, it's really important to have female role models, but I don't think as well, you have to cut men out of being that. You can look at the male MD and say, I want his job and I'm going to get his job. And you can look up to males and work towards kind of, and let them help you and mentor you. So it doesn't have to be female, but I do think it's really important to have female role models as well. I just think, again, balance, comes back to balance.
And I just want to add that I know a lot of people like to have a specific mentor. I do see it as more of a community that you can call upon. So we were talking earlier on about you've been doing iOS recently, for example. So you might have a few people that a community of people that you could ask them an iOS question. When you get back into, say, you're going to Java, you might have a few other friends who do Java and a few other friends who do something else. I know that I have a community around me of male and female in different areas and different technologies, from coding to design to even to marketing, and I know I can call on them and they can call on me, and I find that we help each other out, and that's why what you're saying about your 3,500 community, that's just amazing to know that you don't have that one person, because that one person could be busy that day, or could be on holiday, or for whatever reason. It'd be nice to have and then the not the mentor, the mentee. That's the right word. When they learn something, why can't they teach somebody else maybe at the same level as them? Because it's exactly, absolutely.
Fumi and I were talking about this idea of community, and there's a growing trend now with women in technology communities. And Vinita, you founded Women Hack for Nonprofits, and Hira, you're founder of Chain. And how do you feel that having communities surrounding this idea and this push for diversity is helping us accomplish our goals?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I could speak forever on this. I think it's so important. I definitely think that is the game changer, is having supportive, active, thriving, welcoming communities of women who are, and on diversity. It could be about ethnic diversity, could be about like disability, like wherever you have come across privilege. To smash that privilege, you need to have people who specifically understand why they are being discriminated against, whether that's lack of opportunity or pure discrimination. If you've not been through that pain point, it's really difficult for you to have that as a priority. And if you have other people around you who at least see that as important, it's really true. I mean, I will give you an example of the shocking thing that I heard the other day. I was sitting in level 39 where I work, and there was a guy who was talking. There was a business meeting going on right next to me, and the guy was talking to these two female entrepreneurs. And these female entrepreneurs, I have no idea what their startup is, so I don't know. But the conversation that I heard was about those two saying, "Oh well, we're doing this conference and we're making sure it's very diverse." And the guy was listening to them for like 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, he was like, "To be honest, I will advise you, don't go down this diversity route too much. Like this feminazi thing doesn't really work that well. And people get really turned off by it. You don't want people who just don't have opinions to come up. You want people to actually, people who really should be there. So like the bullet point of this whole conversation was, women don't have opinions. Why bring in women for the sake of being there? Just make sure all the right men can. You don't want to turn off the men who are the investors." And I didn't say anything, but I had a huge rant on Facebook about it. That's what you do, right? And then it just made me realize that all the women in tech groups that I'm part of, this is why we are there. Because now I discussed that with my male colleagues, and they all saw why it was bad. So they all recognize that. So they're good, they understand that they're good human beings. I'm not going to say they're good men. Like, they're good human beings, they're good men, yes. But when I had that rant in the Women in Tech group, the responses I got were phenomenal because so many people had seen the same thing. If I had posted that in a group where there were mostly men, they might not recognize it, or they might not have seen that. It might not have been that painful. So that pain point being there is really important. And that's why I think in Chen, one of the things that we have which works really well is the fact that it was started because there was a gap that nobody was looking at women who were experiencing violence in the online space. There was no online resources that you could count on. So by creating it, we filled that gap. If we weren't there, we wouldn't be noticing all the other gaps. So I feel like those gap filler communities are so important.
So I can't remember the organization that I went to last year, but that organization basically does JavaScript, HTML, CSS workshops. And the organizer of that workshop was telling me that it's so hard and so rare to see women attendees in my sessions. I don't know if there are any women who's working in HTML, CSS space really. And I was like, please come join us. At that time, I was solely working on Women Who Code. WHFNP didn't exist yet then. And I told him that why don't you come to one of our Women Who Code meetup, right? We have about 4,500 women in tech there, and each meetups usually get about 50-60 ladies at the very least, be it R, be it Python, be it Django, whatever. And the fact that I was trying to convey him was that I don't think the problem is really women in tech, or there's no women who's working in tech, or who do not have skills to share. I think it's more a matter of the way you invite them. Right, and the community that you're building, how embracing that community is, and how inviting that community is. Number one. So I went to House of Commons in December. Right, there one lady, or was it one gentleman? I can't remember. But they asked me, "Aren't you really now encouraging positive discrimination? That because of all this different women in tech initiatives, don't you think 10 years down the line, you would probably have men ending up creating men in tech groups because there are so many women in majority?"
That would be awesome.
Right? Yeah. So my answer to him was that where we are at the moment is probably because of all the things that has happened in this society for 50 years or even more than 50 years, right? So it's definitely going to take us another 50 years if we just go by the normal route of bringing parity. Right? Now, I'm not going to be here for next 50 years. I'm probably going to be in this world for maybe another 40 years, and I'll be working in tech for maybe another 10, 15 years more. And I want to see this difference in those 15 years, right? So now if I were to override the work that you guys did in the last 50 years or more in just 10 years of lifespan, I need these initiatives. It's as simple as that, right? So I want the difference now in 5 years. And that's why all these initiatives, all these community groups make sense to me.
Could I add in something as well? I think it's, really interesting what you're saying there. It's not a fluffy topic. diversity in technology and entrepreneurship is critical. And there's a huge skills shortage in the tech industry. We're addressing the fact that 45,000 jobs went. There are jobs there, but they're not able to fill it. And having less women within who are within STEM subjects is we need to make sure that more women are learning to code in order to address this huge skills shortage. It's absolutely critical, and I feel like those two men that you overheard they're becoming irrelevant, really, because as it's really heartening, I think, to see that, for example, the companies that we work with, Twitter, ThoughtWorks, Level 39, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, they are all taking a lead. They want to be leaders in driving a positive change to diversify technology. And I think that's really great that it's breaking free from what you're saying, like groups. It's not a women's problem. It's a problem for the whole sector, for everyone.
Yeah.
Charlotte, can I also ask you, since you work with educating women about code and about technology, do you hear from them, or do you observe that the sort of female environment is supportive in an educational setting? And have you ever experienced like a mixed setting, and was that different?
Yeah, so in terms of with our courses, all of our courses are for women only. So only the students have to be women. And I think, and I suppose it's about bringing together like-minded people, but I also think there's something about being in a similar age group. So for all of our community courses, they're mainly, for our university courses, everyone has to be students at the university, mainly for access reasons. For our London Generals, the people who can apply have to basically be aged 18 to 23. So they're in similar age categories, so recent graduates or students, and I think because they're in similar places, I think that really helps them to learn together. Something that we launched is a ones to watch series. So I think this is just building back on the idea of mentors. So these are 25 women under the age of 25 who we think are doing really exciting things in tech and entrepreneurship. And the idea is that it's fantastic having these big figures, male or female, where you can say, wow, look, they're CEO. But actually it's really important to have people who are a bit more relatable, who are just a few years down the line, who you can look at them and say, actually, what have they done? What can I do? And kind of be really inspired by that positive way.
Just one last thing on this. I think it's really good that we, as movements progress, you tackle one problem and then you go down layers. So we went from having, people from different economic backgrounds participate in tech. Then we have women in tech, and now we're looking at intersectionist tech, looking at people from all sorts of different layers for society that are underrepresented. It's really important to have that approach in mind when we talk about diversity, because a lot of diversity that I see when it comes to gender is just stops there. Stops at gender. It doesn't look at race, it doesn't look at disability, it doesn't look at economic background. I think it's really, really important, these things. And it's really important for us to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
I'd just like to just take a quick moment to remind everyone watching to join the conversation online if you'd like to by tweeting with the hashtag panel for parity. So that's panel for PARITY, or using the hashtag WHFNP, which stands for Women Hack for Nonprofits. So maybe I have a couple more questions before we'll take general questions from the audience here in the room or on Twitter. So if you have any questions, get to tweeting. So the next question is for again for all of our panelists, and it goes: at what stage do you think women are most likely to experience challenges when accelerating their careers, and how do you recommend that women overcome these challenges?
When they go on maternity leave, at least from my perspective.
Sorry,
share more.
Can you repeat that?
So when women usually tend to go on maternity leaves, I think that's
I've just
the
recently
most,
discovered that,
that's the
actually.
most challenging.
If you had asked me this question maybe 3 weeks ago, I would have said maybe entering or when you get to the top of your career. But I've heard some scary stories on the Slack account of what people's experiences. And thinking, this really happens. This is, I thought it would be like in a terrible movie sort of thing. But so now I would say when people go or approaching the age of potential what people may think of maternity leave. But I actually see that as a plus. because
It
not
is.
because they're going away, but because with our, with modern technology moving forward, using more microservices and mixing technologies, we're trying to make everything as small as possible, trying to finish it in half a day. I think, if someone's on maternity leave and they want to work 2 hours a week, why can't they do code reviews? And it's great because they know the project, or they don't know the project. It's a benefit, right? Because if you're code reviewing someone's code and you're part of the project, you go, oh yeah, I understand that. But if someone's separate from the project and say they're looking at it from an outsider's point of view, they will question, well, what does this mean? Why have we done this? I mean, I worked on a recent government project, and it was quite scary. I was team lead, and they were, not because I was team lead, but when they said I was team lead in this project, and they said, well, you're going to swap people in and out every couple of weeks. I was thinking, well, I'm used to having people for like 6 months or a year, and you roll them. And it was actually really, really good, because then you could say, well, we're going to work on this set of features next. We need this sort of person, this sort of skill set. I mean, and then we started having people code reviewing who weren't part of the project. They were doing us 2 to 4 hours a week. I don't know if women on maternity leave want to do that or not, but at least there's the opportunity on both sides, them to make a bit of money and for the project to benefit from their experience, be it on that project or from other projects, to just dip in and out and having that point of view. So I think we could take advantage of that, as long as both parties are happy, obviously. But I think that's good. I think companies are becoming more open to remote working, so therefore again that opens that opportunity, I think.
But then people or organizations or businesses do feel very scared from the cost of bringing a woman in and then bringing them up to speed with the current technology movement or whatever is going on in the tech, because tech moves so fast, right? However, I think the way I look at it is when anyone goes on either maternity leave or paternity leave, whatever, you look at the skills that they are learning, right? When you have kids, you have to juggle things around, right? So you have to prioritize. That means you start valuing your time more. You do not have those 15 minutes luxury of checking your Facebook account in the morning. You have to get up, check your emails, and then be ready for 7:30, wake up your kid, prep them, drop them at school, go to work, 6:30 you have to finish, be at the school, pick them up, bring them back, give them bath, and then resume.
They do say if you want something done, give it to someone busy though, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you just get it done because you won't mess around. I'll do it in a minute. Let me just check this whatever blog post. You're going to get it done.
So that's the prioritization skills that you learn when you start having kids. So that's that value that I see, right? Now, I have heard some. I was lucky. The only organization that I'm always thankful about is Goldman Sachs, because I was so lucky when I came back from my maternity leave, and for me it's not smiling here, but when I came back from maternity leave, I had such a good support with me. I think there was a moms group within Goldman. They assign you a mentor from that group who takes you through different challenges that you might see when you come back to work after maternity leave. They help you out, they answer all your questions, they ask you if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you want to change your job, if you want to have some part-time option, blah, blah, blah. But then the stories that I've been hearing from different other ladies is my manager isn't giving me opportunity because they think I'm going to go off on maternity leave soon, right? So they aren't literally letting me progress on my career ladder. One of the lady, she actually mentioned to me that the moment she sent message saying I might go on maternity leave XYZ time, she was asked that would you be able to stay and work normal hours, right? And that to me was very offending. If I had some personal situation, I would tell you, but me just telling you that I would go on maternity leave 8 months down the line doesn't mean that I can't work or I can't fulfill my normal duties. So I think that, and then usually women tends to go on maternity about 29 years old, 30 years, that's the range, usually between 30 to 35. That's when majority of the women tend to go on maternity leaves. That's exactly the stage when you're progressing in your career, right? So you have joined the industry, you are at a stage where you really climb the ladder very fast if you're very good. And at that time, taking that off for 1 year in itself is a challenging for a woman, right? Because they are sacrificing or compromising their career. Now at that time, if industry tackle it with them in a manner saying you never know, this lady is going to come back, should we invest in her? You never know, she's going to be honest for her work. I think that's just so ridiculous.
Can I just ask you a question? So I think what you're saying, it makes sense, and I do understand that. But are you just focusing just on the permanent employee kind of?
No, even the contractual.
Even the contractual ones, really?
Yeah, because sometimes, like, for example, if it snows tomorrow, right? The first responsibility that I have is to look after my son, irrespective of what my schedule is for tomorrow, even if I'm working part-time. Now, does that make me unreliable?
No, not at all.
Right, but certain businesses do consider me unreliable because who knows, I might not turn up for work tomorrow because of XYZ reason, which are not in my control, but that might affect the business as well. So be it part-time, be it contract, be it full-time, permanent, right? That unreliability on me, not able to turn up tomorrow because of circumstances which are not under my control, might sometimes be unprofitable to the business. But long term, if you retain me, I'll be a better employee because the skills that I've learned being a mom are far better, and they will outperform the problems that bringing me in can cause.
All right, this is where it gets fun, guys. For this next one, I want to hear from all of you. As you know, we're all here in celebration of International Women's Day, which the theme this year is Pledge for Parity, and the goal is to get everyone, men, women, companies, to make a pledge to accelerate gender parity in the workplace. Now, we're here as representatives of the tech industry, and so I wanted to ask you and hear from you, what do you think, what more can companies and individuals, both men and women, do in order to support the advancement of women in their tech careers, of gender parity in tech industry environments? And have you experienced some examples of how this can be done? Go.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think it comes down to a lot of people, a lot of companies put this on, okay, recruitment, we're all about gender parity, go and recruit women, But I think it comes down to the businesses need to make changes. What are you doing to be inclusive? What are you doing for working mums?
Yeah.
What are you doing for people returning back? And something like you said before, you said, I was lucky. But I don't think you was lucky. I think you got that because you deserved it and you're awesome. Like, I'm in total awe of you, and I think you're amazing, and that's what you should have got. And I think what are companies doing to kind of keep women in tech, to keep women motivated? So that's one side, and I also think going back to, got my recruitment head on, going back to kind of getting women into tech and gender parity. You've got to raise awareness. You've got to do as many I run events every month for women in tech, especially graduate level, every single month, and it's all about let's do some live coding sessions, or what's bothering you, let's talk about it, meet our devs, speak to this person, speak to that person. It's all about sharing knowledge and building on confidence, and I think it's vital that companies do as much of this as possible. But it's great to see men there as well, and men in the company as well, to say it isn't just a women feminist thing, because I'm always women, they're all like the crazy feminists, but it's great to see that there's men in the company as well who are there and mentoring and helping out, to say it's a whole thing, it's a company thing rather than just the women in the company.
Something we've been looking at specifically is the lack of figures. There's a real lack in statistics and concrete figures on what actually is the landscape. So we've been addressing this. We're involved in something called the Tech Talent Charter, and it's basically we're getting companies, we're doing research into what are actually the numbers. And I think something that's really hard for companies, if they don't already have like a real kind of ethos at the core of their organization, like you do at ThoughtWorks, to increase diversity, is actually to admit that lots of people are really struggling. It's a difficult and complex topic, but also it's okay. It's not okay, but we can kind of work together. But I think one thing that we're specifically looking at is we need the figures. We need to understand what actually is the situation, to then let's actually get in some real strategic ideas around how can we really address this and drive positive change.
I'll go at last. I'll go last.
7 years ago, I think if somebody would have asked me why there are so less women in tech, I would have said, you know what, people who complain are the people who are probably not as competitive, right? And so they are the ones who will always cringe, right? Because I always used to see from my perspective, look, I'm doing so good, I'm getting whatever I wanted, so what's the problem, right? So if someone else is not getting, probably they aren't as good. So what's the complaint, right? I mean, just work on your skill set and get on from there. 7 years from there now, what I have learned is even though you might not have seen that problem yourself, right? That doesn't mean that problem doesn't exist. So I think the first and foremost thing that we need is the awareness. Right? If so many women out there are complaining about this, that means the problem must be there in some form, some shape. So I guess if we acknowledge that, start working towards solving that problem, identifying what's causing it, I think that's what will give us parity. So I guess awareness, acknowledgement of the problem, and then working towards it.
Yeah. Eddie, any thoughts?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
I think it's all really good information and it's all slightly different.
What more can companies and individuals, both men and women, do in order to support the advancement of women in tech and gender parity in this industry? And have you experienced anything that you think is worth mentioning in this realm?
Wow. I think a lot of really good things have been said already. So I'm not sure how much more I can add.
You are participating this weekend in Acorn Hack, right? Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So this weekend is a hackathon event for girls aged 13 to 19 to get into coding. And it's a great event. I've recently just joined. I'm going in as a mentor. And I think I'm the only guy going. But I think, again, like someone mentioned, getting balanced, I think it's good to have, mentors of diversity, parity, how we said. So, really, really looking forward to it. I'm hoping to get, more involved in it. I think it's kind of the pipeline getting more, what we said, getting more women into tech. And it should be really, really good.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm probably the most near. But so again, 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have even my manager sometimes, and there will be parents who would used to leave their desk at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And we were the people who would come in at 8ish, we would leave 7ish, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And whenever we used to see those parents going early, we would be like, oh wow, so we are the only ones who are working because we are the junior most people. And look at them, they get the luxury of coming in at 9, leaving by 6, see the life that they have got. Now, I don't really know the reason. It's because they are parents, right? So they have to make sure, as I was saying earlier, that they have to look after kids. And in fact, they end up working more because they usually start their day early, they check their emails early, right? And even after having their kids go to bed, they again resume their work, right? So I think that change of perspective is again another thing that we need, just having that that soft skill of observing people and then not judging them just by what you're seeing. I think that's very important.
I'm going to be a bit of a downer, if that's okay. And my pledge that I recommend for companies to take is to
An encouraging downer?
let me hear me out and then you go. My thing, we've covered all the good points. I'm going to cover the one that is really important as well, and I can't help it, is that to take harassment really seriously at work.
Yeah.
It's really important for companies to not think making sexist jokes at conferences, at work events, at interviews is cool. It's not.
Yeah.
It discourages. It really brings it's basically not right. And similarly, I think it's really important for companies to have a harassment policy at work to make sure that women and men know where to go if that happens, and to be very aware of that. I feel like the tech sector has this particular problem, and at one time, my friend who worked as a mechanical engineer in Scotland, and she says she's the only one in a team of 70 men just for her unit, Like you find that a lot of the small problems come out when you go out for a drink or you're at a party, and they just think you're one of the guys, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're just like one of the guys, so I can say whatever I want in front of you. But no, you can't. Whatever you cannot say in front of a woman that you don't know, you should not be saying at all. I'm sorry. So making it very clear that that's not fine is really important, and there are ways to do it in a nice way, so it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable environment at work. But in all of the harassment cases that have come out from VCs, from at work, what you hear is that, oh, we didn't want it to be a bad environment for all the other people in the office. The focus is never on the person who's actually made uncomfortable. So I would just say, please take a pledge to make sure that you have a harassment policy for our work and you implement it.
Okay, now, I think it's time to take questions from the audience, or if our Twitter assistants back there have any Twitter questions, now would be a great time to pop them over. Yes.
Got a couple. Yay. Go ahead. Yeah, so I was actually very interestingly on a group discussion by a company, not Coworks, another tech company, that had reached gender parity and wanted to know what next. And I looked at the women in the room. They were all of incredibly high standard in looks and appearance. None of them were disabled. None of them were severely overweight. None of them were severely underweight. None of them were weighing out the mile. In terms of gender parity and getting the numbers in, it's also, so I agree with what you said. I actually cannot label a specific point in time where I thought I was discriminated against. But I'm a feminist, I'm for women in tech, because even though I can't pinpoint anything particularly, I know that as a teenager, I had a mustache, I had a monobrow, I had horrendous acne, braces, glasses, I was a mess. I grew out of that. And if I didn't grow out of that, I think that would have affected my career, which I think men don't have that issue. So in terms of gender parity, are we getting 50% of women that have had to work hard, that have to be a certain way, that have to look a certain way, that have to dress a certain way? And this sort of things like, there's parity in terms of getting numbers in, but there's also for the numbers that we have, equality is still not there if they're in.
Yeah.
So what do you think in terms of gender parity, what do you think we can do to target that sort of, our standards are still much higher for a woman who has to get to CEO position than a man?
So I think getting the parity is the first step in the right direction, right? You being in a place where 50% of there were women, that in itself was an achievement. So if most of the organizations that we see out there get that, that's like, to me, would be a tremendous move straight, forward. Now, let's say once you are there, then what do you do next? At least being a technology company, usually what I end up doing in my firm is I try to see, or I try to analyze which roles those ladies are working in, right? Now, most often I end up seeing, and this is fortunately or unfortunately, but most often I see them ending up working either in QA domain, right, and testing profile, or I see them working in digital, marketing profile, more on like SEO profile, digital marketing profile, and then if there are more, then they would end up being on the UX profile, right? On the development profile, there are very, very few, even in my own company. Now, how am I trying to solve that problem? I can't really go to my business or to my investors and say them you know what, because I'm a feminist, I'm going to hire more female in development roles. It just can't work like that. However, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give them the skill set that is needed for them to come into mainstream development roles. Now, I'm hoping probably that effort will pay me out, not today, but maybe 5 years down the line, and that's what I'm trying to do. So, yeah.
And that's why I said we need to think about it from an intersectionist perspective. It reminds me of the whole white feminism versus inclusive feminism thing. And I mean, unfortunately, we're stuck with, as you said, the option of let's get all women the right to vote, and then let's look at who's actually voting. Who's allowed to go to the voting booth. So it's the same scenario. I find that a lot of young women. I don't do that many events actually when I'm speaking to young women, but when I do, a lot of women come up to me who are from Muslim backgrounds, and they're like, "Oh my God, so awesome! You're actually working at a tech company." and so to make them feel excited, I'm like, you know what? I've actually been to Twitter's office, and they just love it. They're just like, wow, that's so cool.
from the students as well. So I've had lots of software engineers saying, actually, it's really helped me by having to teach things that I know that are kind of really basic. It's helped me have to articulate it in a way that's, you know, kind of understandable to someone who doesn't have knowledge.
Sharing knowledge, yeah.
Sharing knowledge.
Is
That's a better
biggest
word.
one. Yeah.
Sharing.
Can I jump in on that? Because I recently started at ThoughtWorks, and I went from a 3-month boot camp, and in that work I started a Slack channel for just all the girls in the group. And one thing I noticed, and I say to everyone who, I've done some interviews, and actually a girl from Code First Girls, and all of the women, I give them this advice. Job hunting is extremely strenuous. You don't want to tell people you've gone for a job. You want to tell people you've got it. Because if you go for a job and you don't get it, you have to then tell them that you didn't get it. But what I actually did is, before I went for my interview here, I posted on the Slack channel and told people I was going. And in the morning of my interview, I got this huge stream of well-wishing, and you can do this, and you're fantastic. And I know the guys, filmmakers, don't get that. They don't get that. So I tell all the girls going through, at least tell your girlfriends, at least tell the group when you're going for something, because that makes a huge difference to your confidence. A lot of times women will look on an application form and say, I can only do 7 out of 10, I can't apply for that.
Yeah.
But if they went to their female friends and said, would you recommend me for this job? They're like, yeah, great, you're fantastic, you could totally do that, I'd totally hire you.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually a huge thing in terms of entering. If you're thinking of going to Code First Girls, if you're thinking of changing your career, having a core group of girls that come with you whether you decide to do it or not, and saying when you're actually going to even apply for a job, that makes a big difference. I think that's actually something that we have that a lot of men don't.
I think that's a really good point.
I love that.
We were talking about that, saying that actually lots of people from our community, they might see a job at ThoughtWorks and they wouldn't apply. But if they see it in our newsletter, because there's an association, then they would apply. So I think that's really
in fact, Code First Girl, a few of your sort of graduates have joined Chen as volunteers.
Okay, I need to get the figures on there.
But can I just one thing that you said, which I have also noticed, and just wanted to say that there's this concept of internalized misogyny, and there's exactly the same concept of like sabotage for your own community. It's like when you feel like you've worked really hard and you've got to a level, I don't know what happens to humans, but some of us will feel like we shouldn't pass it on. And there's nothing we can do to change that. The culture needs to change to make it less cutthroat.
Maybe it's that feeling, right, that I have done so much to be where I am, so it can't be easy for other person.
And people, that's a cultural problem, and that's just something there's nothing we can do about that, apart from making sure we have other pockets of amazing communities which like you can join to get support.
I also think lots of people sometimes feel like, say they're really early on in their career, and they might feel like, what can I teach? But I think that's the thing. It's never too early to start encouraging others as well.
Yeah, that's true. It obviously worked on Nicola because she came in and absolutely smashed her interview. And it was like borderline creepy because I was like, I love you. They're like, oh yeah.
I think we have time for one more. Yeah? Do we have a Twitter one too?
We have one from Slack community.
All right, let's do 2 more. Why not?
So, what can companies do to be more inclusive and help women from class 30 to get into the tech industry?
What can companies do to be more inclusive?
To help women
To help women over 30. Okay.
To get into the tech.
Do awareness sessions, right? I mean, I think awareness sessions is the one first and the foremost thing that I would do. Just to spread the message that leaving early, getting in late is not a problem, right? And at least people should not be reacting with raised eyebrows, saying what's happening there.
But it's not bums on seats, right? I refuse to go back to contracts that are talking about bums on seats. I need you here at 9, here to 5.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'll stay later if work needs to get done. And if the weather's bad, like you said, if it snows, I'll work from home. It's on GitHub. You can see all my commits, right? You're going to see the work being done. So it's not about bums on seats. So I think more and more companies are going that way. But we need to educate them again that, age doesn't matter. I don't think you can start at any age, and you can help anyone from any part of your career. Just to reinforce that, I think that's really important. I mean, I live on GitHub and I live, and everything's open source, right? So I don't. Okay, yes, you want to keep some things private, but I don't think you need to. And I think it's I just think everything's been said.
I have literally just a one-line answer to that is they should be funding programs like Code First Girls for women over 30, and like it is very inclusive. We actually started a program as well to get women to embrace digital. This is like pre-Code First Girls. Even before you think about code, just even before then, let's just get you playing around with Photoshop. Let's just get you playing around with Google Docs. Let's just get you playing around with like CSS for website. Like, you know, the change I've seen in women, and I've done this with a lot of women in my family, it's like getting them to change the CSS of like Google's homepage, and it freaks them out. They're like, oh my God, I've broken Google's homepage. And I'm like, no, it's okay. We just like added this thing.
Actually, Charlotte, you were telling me that you have a higher demand now from older participants to be a part of Code First Girls.
Yeah. So we, you know, as the name of the organisation might suggest, and we actually started out mainly with students, so they form a large part of our community, and sort of recent graduates as well. But yeah, we were consistently having people asking on Twitter in our info inbox, you know, I want to learn to code. I'm a woman. You know, at any age I might be in work or, you know, out of work on maternity leave. And so we launched Code First Girls Professionals last autumn winter, and they're basically part-time courses. Beginners introduction to web development, and they're affordable. It's like £600 or so, and the idea is that boot camps are fantastic, but you have to have the money and you have to have the time and resources to be able to do that. And I think we need more initiatives where people can at least. I think it's almost overwhelming. So many people who start with our courses, they might have tried to learn online, but I think there's so much information. It's really nice to be in a in-person class with other women, like-minded women, and just kind of have a bit of a guiding. And then after that, then it kind of liberates you, especially if you're in London or, you know, anywhere. So many amazing meetups, so much online resources that you can then go onto. And just be a bit more informed.
I joined one recently, actually, which is Mums in Tech. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yeah,
they have it here, I think.
Yeah, we love Mums in Tech. June,
I've just discovered it, so I was actually emailing June, and it's something I want to get involved in as well, because I think that's just brilliant. You know, so what if you're coding while holding your kid? I mean, the amount of calls I speak to my friends, and we're doing like, I don't know, Google Hangout, whatever, and they're coding away. I've got this bug, can you help me? And holding a kid, it's like 3 a.m. or something.
It's great.
Coding away. Well, you know, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
I'll be on a Skype call or whatever, and someone's like, "Is that a baby behind you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there is." But no, yeah, it's a great initiative.
Right, last one. Rainy, you want it?
Okay, so my question is with regards to these project groups. We've got quite a few within groups at the moment. How do we see a way of getting the groups to work together more effectively to actually become a super community, so we can actually impact and affect change even from a political and a sort of organisation perspective? Because we have all these people, and because we're working in such silos, somehow we need to change it so we actually become a movement rather than silos.
I've got an answer.
Google Tech Makers is one of those organizations. I don't think they have any initiative to set up their own, women org and run that. What all they do is they partner with different women organizations. So, for example, Women in Code is one of the partner organizations. WHFNP is one of the partner organizations. And what they do is basically they help these organizations out. They help them run in tandem. They make the introductions, and they just help them to work together. So I think we just need more of those initiatives. I mean, in organizations like Google, ThoughtWorks, they're so huge, right? So I think they are the best placed to have these organizations work together and leverage the synergy there.
So me and you are thinking the same thing. And this was something. This was a question that I was speaking about towards the end of last year. And me and one of my colleagues, Gabby, we came up with this idea, Women Think Tank. And that was exactly what you've just said. How do we connect? We don't want it, I do not want this to be a ThoughtWorks thing at all. That isn't the aim. The aim of it is to connect all of these organisations and have an impact. Like, how do we do that? And it might not work, but I'm going to do everything I can for it to work. And it's about linking with all you awesome women and men, and linking with all these groups and being like, even if one of you from each group comes along, let's all meet up here. Let's talk about, let's share knowledge. What does your company do to keep you happy and work there? Can I take that? Can I bring that to ThoughtWorks? Can you bring that to some of the things that you do? And how can we have a big impact? So it might not work, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen.
I think it will work because a lot of the communities that a few of us belong to here, there is overlap already. You know, I've been introduced to other communities from
Overlap. This one.
So I think anything to enhance that will work because it's already working already without any guidance. If you guide it and you give it and fuel it a bit more, then I think it would take off absolutely.
And Eddie and I can give an example of like Empower Hack. So we, Empower Hack started in November. Eddie came to the first one. Eddie became part of the volunteer team that runs Empower Hack. Chrissy, who was behind, and you can't see her, but she was one of the people who got involved. Chrissy is part of Women Hack for Nonprofits. Chrissy harassed everybody in her team to get involved with Empower Hack, and now coders from Empower are working together to make sure there are solutions for women and girl refugees that get built for women by women, and it's awesome.
And it goes even further than that because then you have Chester, Elizabeth, sorry.
Yes.
And her Slack name's Chester, so she introduced us to what was the next step? It was
UX exchange. Well,
yes,
exchange.
I went to that one, and
also
an Acorn Hack we mentioned before, and vice versa. I think it's a two-way street.
It's really good cross-pollination.
Absolutely.
I think also just kind of so I've had lots of conversations with organisations like RoboGirls, for example, STEMettes. So people they're slightly different demographic to us. They're younger, they're in schools. It's not our mission, but we can actually learn an awful lot from each other around how we running volunteer-led communities that work up and down the UK where we're working remotely together. And it's been really helpful actually, just kind of in an informal way, almost making like mini committees. It's like just kind of sharing knowledge, pooling knowledge around what are you doing there? What's working for you? Could that work for us? Or, kind of sharing ideas, I think.
So just to bring it all to a close, just one final question for all of our panelists, and we'd like each one of you to give us a response to this. And as we mentioned earlier, the theme of this year's International Women's Day is Pledge for Parity. So what pledge are you going to personally make to help accelerate gender parity in the tech industry?
Please jump in.
I think from my perspective, I'm trying whatever I can do. One of the pledges that I have taken for myself and for my organization, Sustainable, the company that I run, is we're gonna try our best to recruit and retain diverse workforce, right? I cannot go beyond what my business can afford, but I'll definitely try my best. And if there aren't enough ladies for me to recruit from, then I'll probably mentor those ladies and then have them in. So that's my pledge, to have 50-50. Hopefully.
Can I have part A and part B to my pledge? Sure. Okay. So my part A to the pledge is that one of my absolute passion is to help women who've survived violence and oppression from people that they know, to get them into tech, because it's something that they can learn in their own space where they feel comfortable, through an initiative that we started called Amal, that we're partnering with Code First Girls with. So that's my first pledge, is to make sure that happens this year. It is happening, but to make sure it grows. It's already being done in the UK, and it's we have promise from Pakistan, India, South Africa, Lebanon, Jordan. So we want that to happen. And then my part B of my pledges is I'm part of this new community, which is about women in open data. I work in open data, and I want to make sure that there are loads of women in open data, but they don't, you can't see them. Is to make sure that you can see them and you can get more women involved in specifically open source and open data.
Okay. My pledge, I've already briefly spoke about it, is I will put 100% into Women Think Tank, and I want to do everything I can for these groups to come together and actually make change and make a difference and have an impact. So even if it all crumbles on me and I look like a loser, I will put 100% into it.
So outside of Code First Girls, getting more women into technology and entrepreneurship, my personal pledge is I actually started my beginner's web development course at ThoughtWorks. I've just finished it, and by October, I want to be teaching on one of our courses. So I want to go from student to volunteer instructor. It's my personal pledge.
My personal pledge, I would like to do majority, if not all of my talks going forward to more diverse groups. So Kent mentioned all these great communities, mums and tech and so on. So that's what I'd like to do. That's the bit I can do from a tech side, I think. I'm not great organisers and all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
But you bring the things that I can't bring, for example.
Team effort.
Balance.
High five. But absolutely, yes. So get more women to open source as well. I do chase actually women hack for non-profit. I got some confessions to make. Apologies to some people because I do chase them saying, I haven't seen any GitHub open source commit in the last week. Where is it? I say, I will. So absolutely. So I want to continue with that. I think that's great.
Great. All right, thank you. And that wraps up our panel. We'd just like to encourage everyone who's watching to visit the International Women's Day website and go to /pledge, and you can make your own pledge as well. I hand it over to Ellie to wrap up.
Thank you guys so much. You're all awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you to ThoughtWorks, our graceful hosts, your audience, everyone watching at home. And thank you to Women Hack for Nonprofits and all of our panelists. If you want to continue the conversation, tweet at us at #panelforparity and go make your pledges on the internationalwomensday.com/pledge website. Thank you.